conference will now be recorded.
Awesome. All right, everyone. We are on to our next webinar. Previously, we reviewed best practices with Wayne to attract, vet, and hire top talent. Now let's transition our focus to developing that talent and getting the most out of our team. Before we dive into that topic and learn more about our guest speaker, let's first review a few housekeeping items. After each webinar, the recording will be uploaded to our Pickup USA YouTube channel and our Frank Connect library. If you have people on your team who have HR management responsibilities but cannot join us live, I strongly recommend sharing the recording with them. That way, they too can incorporate the proven principles that our guest speakers have been so kind to share with us. Now, it's not listed on this graphic, but in the next hour, Aaron will be hosting a webinar on financial forecasting. On Friday, Malcolm will be hosting a webinar on cash flow management to wrap up our HR and finance training week. Please also remember that for all of our live webinars, our guest speaker will be available to answer any questions after their presentation. You can do this one of two ways. You can type your question in the chat box or simply unmute yourself. Now that we've gotten our housekeeping items out of the way, I'm excited to introduce today's esteemed guest speaker, Jeffrey Beauzil. Jeff and I go way back. Throughout the years, he's been the person I've leaned on the most when it comes to advice on leadership, sales, or life in general. If you get to know Jeff, you'll find that he's extremely driven and he has a firm resolve to get stuff done. Yet, he does so with incredible humility and heart. Jeff has spent the past 10 years with ADP and deservedly climbed his way to the top. He is currently the Vice President of Small Business Service Digital Sales there, meaning he has seen and learned from many businesses that are similar to us. You can see many of the accolades he's earned on the screen, not least of which is boasting the highest retention of employees in the country. As Jordan said in Monday's webinar, this is a giant badge of honor for any boss. Wayne also alluded to this in his previous webinar. By doing an outstanding job of retaining his team, it is no surprise that he is the top VP in the country, with a whopping 63% of his team performing above their sales plan, earning ADP $38 million in sales over the last 22 months. Frankly, I couldn't think of anyone better to teach us how to develop a high-performing team. Jeff, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to help us with this. As always, I'm excited to learn from you. So without further ado, please take it away.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me, Paulo. I love sharing ideas with you and just iron sharpens iron. And I love what Pickup USA is about.
For ADP. They do our.
Yes, he is correct. Malcolm.
Sorry, audience, if you don't mind, throughout the presentation, if you just mute yourself, we'll open up the end of the presentation for your questions. But in the meantime, mute yourself so Jeff can go through his presentation unencumbered. Thank you.
No worries. We're always going to roll with it, as I'm sure you do. Many of you do as owner operators. You roll with what comes, so we'll roll with anything that comes here. I'll read this just so we can set the table, set the stage. As a leader, your job is to do everything in your power to create perfect conditions for success by benching your ego and inspiring your team to play the game the right way. This was by the man himself, Phil Jackson. Next slide, Paulo. All right, so let's start here. Why is onboarding important? I want you to remember three numbers: 91, 69, and 20. Companies with an engaged onboarding program retain 91% of their first year employees. We know how much we go through to onboard, to teach, to coach, to train, to cultivate employees. Imagine if you were able to focus on one specific thing that allowed you to retain almost 90% of those employees. The second portion, new hires with a well-structured onboarding program were 69% more likely to remain at a company for up to 3 years. They see the vision, which we will talk about later. 20% of the staff turnover occurs within the first 45 days of employment. I'm sure if I go around here and we gave you the guys the opportunity to unmute, all of you can tell me a story about a job, maybe one of your first few jobs, and you can tell me a story about how you were onboarded, a story about how the staff welcomed you, how the owner welcomed you, how expectations were set. I bet everybody has something that specifically sticks out in their mind. I did this activity with some of our leaders in here. I was lucky enough to host a leadership training and did it with about 60 of our sales executives here who are over teams. And every single person had some type of color commentary as far as their onboarding experience. It is extremely impactful and it sets the stage for how you're going to perform in the future. Next slide, please, Paulo. All right, so what are the best things to do when it comes to onboarding? Very, very simple. First, we want to make sure they feel at home. We're going to spend, let's say, in your cases, part-time or full-time, you're spending anywhere from 3 to maybe 6, 7 hours in a specific location with a specific group of people. You should feel comfortable around those people. So introduce them to the team members. Allow them the opportunity to know the different things. Get to know their personal and professional goals as an owner operator. But you can also share some of the other people's personal and professional goals, and even some that may align with the person that you're bringing in. I think number three is one of my favorite, and it's something that I've really hung my hat on. I think it is the cornerstone to building a strong team. You have to be able to discuss the vision and the specific role this person, even though they're new, will play within that vision. This is where I see you. This is what we're about. This is why we're here. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is why I got into the business. This is my why. Talk to me about your why personally. And now let's talk about your why professionally and your hopes and aspirations professionally. Take the time to do these steps. And the next one is don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves. Don't be afraid to get down and dirty. And I know with the Pickup USA training, you guys are required to do a little bit of the each job just to understand the trials and tribulations that each job goes through, but also the successes and the joy that they can feel, just so you can communicate that to your staff members as you bring them on. And lastly, but definitely not least, make sure they know you believe in them and their success. Like they have to understand you hired them for a reason. You hired them because you saw something in them. You want them to exceed expectations. And Jack Welch, famous business leader, amazing books. Love some of his quotes, but good business leaders create a vision, articulate the vision, passionately own the vision, and relentlessly drive it to completion. If you look at all the top leaders, I would say 90 plus percentage of them, they each have probably 3 to 4 to 5 specific quotes about how important the vision is. People have to have that sense of why, that sense of purpose. They have to want to be around for a reason. So I think the vision is huge. Next slide, please, Paulo. All right, so I'll go quick through this one with Coach K, but there are 5 fundamental qualities that make every team great: communication, trust, collective responsibility, caring, and pride. Coach K likes to think of each as a separate finger on the fist. Any one individual is important, but all of them together are unbeatable. So if you can master each of these fingers and you can close that fist, you'll be able to do damage. Next slide, please, sir. All right, and I think one thing after again, I know we're gonna have further future sessions where we talk about other specific points. We wanted to keep everything pretty high level today um, with the onboarding, but one thing I think as a leader, you need to set expectations not only for performance but for mindset. I think the mindset and how you want that to be is huge, because once you set that standard of mindset, and this graphic on the right is above and below the line thinking for some that want to see it. I'm sure you can put it in Google, put it in YouTube. uh, Some people talk about it as the Oz theory, but it's basically a form of thinking where the mind, the natural human brain, wants to pull you below the line. When you're below the line, it's really just pointing the finger and not the thumb. It's really about everything else that is kind of out of their control and playing the victim, uh, playing the blame game, playing the oh woe is me. It's all of those things, and our mind is programmed sometimes in some specific situations to bring us below the line. When you are below the line, the main thing is to realize that you're slipping below the line, take a step back, and then start thinking, all right, how can I be solution oriented? What are the specific obstacles in front of me? What are the challenges I'm facing? All right, I see it. How can I own it? How can I point the thumb and not the finger? What can I specifically do to take steps towards a resolution? How can I solve this now? All right, now I got to go out there and execute. This is what we want. We want people who are solution oriented. And I take the time to set that stage with each individual employee on the way they should be thinking. And all the tenured people on my team, that's the beautiful thing about keeping employees for a long period of time. They will become your advocates. They will continue to preach that vision even when you're not in the room. They will continue to reinforce your specific pillars of excellence even when you're not in the room. So as a leader, make sure you're earning trust. You set that clear standard, and make sure you equip these people and inspire them to meet that standard. And I think this graphic is huge for me. So in short, solution oriented. Have a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset. Thank you. Next one, Pella. All right. So there are varying levels of development. When somebody starts, this is a situational leadership model. This is something we use here. Now, again, you guys can tailor this to, we're not going to get too granular. I'm not going to read every one, but I'll read just a few. You can tailor it to suit your specific style. But when somebody comes in, they're new, they're eager to learn. They're going to require a lot of direction. They're going to be in that D1 category. So low competence, but high commitment. They really want to prove themselves. They really want to do the job. They want to earn money. When somebody's in this D1 stage, the best thing to do is give them direction, clear, concise direction. Help them structure their day. Show them what good looks like, which we'll talk about later with the specific KPIs. But show them, even down to the smallest detail. Hey, you're going to clock in at 9. You're going to do this afterwards. You can take your lunch break here. You can do X, Y, and Z here. You're expected to do this in this time block. Help them calendarize and structure their day. It will only benefit them. Even if they switch a few things or you're flexible and they talk to you about changing a few things later on, it will still give them a solid foundation for growth and success. As they progress and as they get to D2 or D3, if somebody's a D3, they have modern competence and varying levels of commitment. These D3s are coached a little bit differently. There's obviously more support when it comes to a D3, and it's less direction. So you're looking to empower them. You're looking to set the expectation on how you would like something to be performed, a task to be performed, or a specific group of tasks to be performed, and then it's their show. Put your own spin on it. Make it yours. I trust you. I believe in you. You've done this, and we'll talk about it, and we'll see where we can adjust afterwards. But it's basically you want to give them the keys and you want to support them and you want to make sure, you're going to hear me say it again and again, but inspect what you expect. The most difficult thing, and I've fallen into this trap, is when you say, all right, it's your show, go ahead and do it. Then 2 3 weeks later you're looking at the results and you're like, wait, there are no results, this is terrible, what happened? And by that time it's already snowballed. It's very, very difficult to course correct where you're leaving when you're leaving such big gaps in between. So you always want to inspect what you expect. We'll go to the next slide, Pilo. All right, this is where I wanted to spend a little bit of my time. Key performance indicators, KPIs. Now, a lot of times you'll see people come in and they'll say, hey, well, what's your job? My job is to sell. My job is to get people in and to get people as members. get memberships or get training contracts. All right. If I went in, and I'll ask each of you this is rhetorical, none of you have to answer it, but if I went in and asked your employees, hey, well, how many people do you need to call to get 5 people in a day? How many people do you need to actually contact to get 5 people in a day? Or even, let's start from the back end. How many dials do you need to make to potentially get enough people on the phone to get 5 people in for the next day? How many people can answer that? Now, of those 5 people in, how many of those people do you need to close in order to be on the right track to hit your goal for the month? What is your goal for the month? What's the record for the store? What has somebody done in Pickup USA per month? What's the highest someone's ever done in a month? What about a week? What about a day? How many employees would be able to answer that? Who's the all-time leader in training sessions booked? Who's the all-time leader in-person appointments set and converted? Who is that? If I asked everybody on this phone, you see the jersey in the back, you see that poster up there. If I say, who is the all-time scoring leader, or who's the top 3 or 4 or 5 scoring leaders in NBA history? Who's the top in blocks? Everybody on here probably is going to be able to answer these questions because we're all competitive. And guess what? You're probably hiring people with a similar profile. But if you're not giving them anything to want to compete for, you're doing them a disservice. You're not starting that part where you're creating the vision. They don't know what great looks like. They don't even know what good looks like. They barely know what okay looks like. They're coming in and they're saying, yeah, all I know is I got to do this and I'll find a way to get revenue. Specific, clear, measurable goals. So in our world here, we call these KPIs, key performance indicators, for my specific teams here. We'll talk about how many dials they need to make to get a specific amount of, we call them executive overviews, which are meetings with business owners or specific clients. Of those, and we have the conversion rates for each based on the number of dials you make. Somebody who's starting off can probably convert about 1.5% of those dials to an EO. As you get a little bit better, you'll get up there. You'll probably convert about 3 to 3.5%, maybe even 4% of those dials to an EO. Of those EOs, normally the next stage is proposal. That's when we're sending some sort of paperwork out. Normally, of those EOs, about 45 to 60%, depending upon how good you are. In the beginning, it's in the high 30s. Go to proposal stage. Some of our best is between 60 and 70% go to proposal stage. As far as now, from the paperwork in hand to closing, if you're just starting off, you may be around 15, 20%. As you get better, as you learn how to put in urgency, as you get specific keys from some of the top closers here and your leaders and your mentors, your percentage is going to go up. Our top people are anywhere from 45 to 47%. Middle of the way is about 35%. How many of you as owners can rattle off those numbers? It starts from the top. If you don't know what good looks like, what great looks like, your employees, chances are good, they're not going to know either. So understanding that specific track, understanding where they are, it helps you when you're coaching them within the sales process, because we know it's tough. We know it's tough to gain access. Well, hey, what if you get more shots up? We know you're only converting at 1.5%, but what if you get more shots up? What if you give yourself more attempts? What would happen then? Let's look. You would actually be getting 10 EOs to where you're right now, you're doing $10 a day and you're getting 1 EO. If you up that to 30, 40, 50, whatever the metric is, think about how many more EOs you would get, how many more hits you would get just based off of sheer numbers. But what you're also doing there is putting in the sweat equity and you're getting better. You're learning, you're growing, you're advancing. Like these are the things you have to be able to communicate to them. This is what you have to do. This is how you have to speak to them so they can see things clearly and they can see there's hope and there's progression. And now let's say somebody, obviously, is not getting enough people in the building. It starts here in the front. It starts here with how many outreaches they're making, how many attempts, how many uh, field goal attempts are they getting. Look at this. When you get them in the building, our top people are getting paperwork in hand 60% of the time. You're at 57%. As a matter of fact, closing, when it comes to actually signing on to become a member, our top people are at 35 to 40%. New people aren't usually over 20, 25%. You're at 32%. You close at 32%. So what do you see, John? You give a moment. You let John deliberate. Well, man, like, so if I can get more people in the building, I'll be making more money. I'll bring Pick Up USA more money. Yes. Well, how do you think we can get more people in the building? How do you think you can tee more of those up? I got to give myself more shot attempts. I got to get up more shots. Yeah. Well, how do you think you can do that? How can we schedule your day? How can we calendarize it to help hold you accountable? And we'll talk about that portion also. But these are the conversations you need to be having as far as key performance indicators. And again, you see it on the bottom. Inspect what you expect. I'm not going to go ahead and read the slide. You guys can read those bullet points. Paulo, go ahead to the next one. So how do you drive the accountability? Now that you set the stage, you talked about what good looks like, what great looks like, where they are right now, and which portion they need to kind of double down on and work harder on. Okay, let's talk about accountability. You control the climate of this conversation. Set clear expectations. So you control the climate when you're setting the clear expectations. So what do we have right now? What do we have in front of us right now? We have a great list. We have inbound stuff that's coming in. We have people that call in. So what do you have in front of you? Okay, with that, what can we do? Can we schedule? Can we calendarize? Do you know what speed to lead means? One stat that I didn't put up here. Do you know that a lead, somebody that calls in, that's in even the smallest bit of the buying window, is 95% more likely to close if you reach back out to them, or if you pick up or can speak to them within, depending upon the industry, is the first 3 to 6 hours max. Some it's much less. So when we talk about speed to lead, picking that phone up, not being afraid, not putting people off, making sure you're scheduling follow-ups with people. It's huge. It's huge. So what can we control? What can we do? Setting those clear expectations, and then clear competence. All right. Now, making sure they understand the process, they understand the why, they understand how to sell the product is going to be huge, because that's going to give them confidence. The more confidence somebody has, the better they're going to be able to sell. Plain and simple. The more customers they're going to be able to attract for you guys. The more clients, current members are going to be able to be wowed with their knowledge and their expertise. So testing for clear competence, understanding where they are as far as the competency level, and then understanding what can we do. Okay, so we're going to ask and observe. We're going to ask specific questions around this, and we're going to try to help them fill in the gaps, either by ourselves or with some of our champions. Hopefully we have some tenured folks on our group with some of our champions. Now, you know what? You know who's really good at that? Let's ask Malcolm. Let's ask John. Let's ask Katie. I'm going to have you just schedule a few minutes with them, and they're going to go over their best practice with you. They're amazing. They're amazing with that. Clear commitment. I think this is where a lot of people fall short. Commitment is what turns a promise into reality. I'm sure you've all had employees where they're saying, "Oh, I promise you, I'm gonna get to the number. We're gonna hit this. Yeah, we're gonna be the top club." Well, what are you committing to? If you already showed them what good looks like, if you show them that if they make 70 calls within a day, and by the way, they're here 5 hours, and if I ask them specifically, hey, in a 5 hour time frame, how many calls do you think you'd be able to make? What what's a lot? What's a little? And then let's meet in the middle. Let's say most of them will probably say, I don't know, 10. 10 maybe in an hour. Okay, so 10 calls in an hour. All right, all right, all right. So 10's a little low. What's the high? All right, maybe 20. Okay, so let's even meet in the middle. Let's say you can make 15, maybe 17 calls an hour. You're usually here for 5-hour shifts. Let's do the math here. If I'm making 17 calls and I'm taking those 17 calls and I can do 4 hours and I can break up my day. Just 17 calls. I think you could probably make 20 to 25, especially once you start seeing the results. But let's say 17. If you out of your 5 hours, if you're here to sell, if you can get 4 different call blocks, maybe it's a half an hour, maybe it's an hour, but if you can get 4 different call blocks out of those 5, 6 hours, whatever it is, and do 17 calls in each of those call blocks, by the end of your shift, you'll be at 68 calls. What's that number we said? That magic number we said if you hit, you're guaranteed to win. Statistically impossible for you to lose. They're going to say 70. We looked at it, it's 70. Exactly. So you're right there. You're right there. So do you think you can commit to specifically doing? Oh, easily. Yeah, 17 is not that much. Okay. Okay. Now, so we had the commitment. We have the measurement now. All right. So when I'm tracking it as far as the measurement, I want to make sure I really want you to win, dude, because I think you're one of the most talented people we've ever had here. I think you have the opportunity to skyrocket and be one of the most talented people in the country throughout all the franchises. How can we make sure you're on track? Notice my questions. Notice my pauses. This is deliberate. This is specific. This is how you speak to people. This is how you energize them. This is how you get them focused. This is how you get them thinking. This is what wins. This is success. Once they talk to you and then they get that buy-in, well, what's the best way for me to give you visibility to it? Or what's the best way for you to give me visibility? Oh, I could probably send you like how many I made um each day. Oh, that would be amazing. Or we could do a checkpoint midweek. All right. You want to send me that checkpoint midweek? Or you want to send me that checkpoint at the end of each night? Let's do it. I want to make sure, like, we're doing a success plan. I want to make sure you're here, you're going to kill it. Because if you do this, the pipeline you'll build and the referrals you'll get, it's just going to be easy after that. Can you see that vision? Do you understand that? Yes. Yes. Okay. Now, what do you want? What do you want to see? Let's set some consequences here. And consequences, they have a negative connotation, but I'm talking about something they can be good too. What happens if you don't meet your metrics and your commitment? What happens if you don't meet the commitment? How can I hold you accountable? What do you think is fair? I know in the past some people have said, "Hey, I'll send you an email on specific roadblocks I had, specific challenges I had that stopped me, and maybe you can help guide me and show me how to remove those from my path so I can hit these metrics." If you want to do that, I'm in. But what do you think, John? Okay. All right. So you like that method? You want to send me an email? Or however, again, I know we're going to do another session later on. We can get into these things, but the other one is positive. Like what happens if you hit? Like I want to make sure Paulo, Jordan, I want to make sure it's not just our building, our place that knows you. I want to send some recognition to the CEO and the VP. I want to let them know because I want them to shout you out in front of everybody. Would you like that if you hit? You mean I get shouted out throughout the whole country? Yes. Is that something you're okay with? Like I don't want to overstep, but I would love the opportunity to highlight you because you're putting in the work. And I don't think anybody has that dog in them like you have. So let's do that. Done. When you don't hit, you'll send me that and we'll course correct. And we'll talk about how we can remove some of those obstacles. But when you hit, because I know you're gonna hit, I'm sending Jordan and Paulo that recap. And they're just gonna see the success we're having and they're gonna know the foundation of that success is you. And when it comes time, remember our vision, we talked about getting multiple locations. So when it comes time for us to get a few of those other locations, you already know. When it comes time for the next promotion, You already know what you're doing. You're setting up your brand. This is branding you. Let's go to the next slide, Paulo. Spent a lot of time on the KPI piece. All right. Now we're coming to close here. I think empowering your people. It's huge. It's not really the tools you have faith in. Tools are just tools. They work or they don't work. Club Ready, I heard it's a great tool. But guess what? However many names it houses, those names collect dust unless you're leading your people, empowering your people, and you're teaching them how to execute. It's the people. So we call ourselves chief people officers. I tell my leaders they are chief people officers. They're CPOs. Each of you is a CPO. Jordan's a CEO. Each of you is a CPO. You're the chief people officer of your own organization. It's all about the people. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. You build that winning culture by understanding these specific components of building your team. So empowering your people, have regular connection points with your people, provide feedback, but also provide recognition. You can't always speak toward the negative. Allow them to take ownership of something when it comes to that point. Clearly communicate your trust and belief in them. You can never do that. You can never do that enough. You can do that strategically, but I don't think you can ever. Oh man, my boss, he tells me I'm doing a good job too much. Can't happen. And lastly, allow them to fall forward. They're going to make mistakes. Just make sure you're giving them the coaching and the feedback accordingly. But don't always just focus on the negative. Make sure you're calling out the positive. You're giving that recognition because it's going to 10x their performance and their drive. Next slide, please, Paulo. All right, so my closing thoughts here. The strength of the team is each individual member. The strength of each individual member is the team. As you continue to build your team and you're taking a deliberate approach to onboarding your people properly and coaching them, holding them accountable, making sure they understand what good looks like, you're putting in amazing pieces in the puzzle. And all of a sudden your team starts to form. Your tenured people, they know what to do. They start to help you even when you're not there. They start to help raise this person's bar. They start to go above and beyond to build their brand and help your new hire. They start to communicate your vision even when you're not here. Oh my God, man, you've been like, nobody's been a dog like you. Jeff's been talking about you as far as what you're doing on the phone. Are you really making 70 calls? And oh man, unprompted. Once you get this, you start to create something and it's a snowball effect. It's a snowball effect. And it makes it easier. I know Jordan did his session on working on the business as opposed to in the business. This is how you get to that point. This is a big part of how you get to that point. What you pour into your team, especially in the beginning and as they grow, gets you more time back in your day to work on the business. With that, I'll turn it back over to Paulo. I thank you all for having me today. I hope you were each able to take something. I'm just very passionate about this area, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions. Paulo, the floor is yours.
Jeff, that was amazing stuff. Thank you for all of that. A lot of key points there and things that we try to echo here in terms of setting clear expectations and developing your team, being very deliberate about that. And it seems like measurement is a key piece for your team over there. Setting very clear measurements and then having a cadence of accountability seems to be important to you. So really cool stuff there. So JR says, appreciate it, crushed it, very helpful. I want to open up the floor to the audience here to ask Jeff any specific questions that you may have pertaining developing your team. So Jeff, it seems like our audience is a bit shy here. For one of the questions that we had previously asked in Jordan's webinar was some folks were having a tough time kind of finding those people and getting their buy-in, getting their commitment. So, key tenet to that is obviously compensation, but, what have you found as a tool to really drive commitment for you?
Yeah, I think for me it goes back to the vision. Like they got to understand what you're trying to accomplish. They got to understand a little bit of your why. They have to have a bit of a personal connection with you, but you have to understand their personal and professional goals. And then you got to communicate the specific vision again, but let them know where you see them fitting into that vision. Let them know where you see them as they grow and give them a clear path, a clear road of steps they need to take to get there. That's how I've been able to just get the buy-in and keep the people here.
Awesome. And it's very hard in the beginning to trust people, right? So a previous question that we had is, do you have a trial period? At what point do you start, transitioning from onboarding them very deliberately and being that director that you said, as opposed to transitioning to being more of a support coach, right? So
Yeah.
what's that line for you?
Yeah. So as I gain my champions, as I gain my people on my team that are a little bit more tenured, that have been through it, that know our standard, that know our mentality, that know kind of the experience we want to bring and know the vision, the complete vision, I bring them into the process and I have them get involved with the onboarding and I have them support the onboarding in specific ways. And if I'm lucky enough, again, you guys are starting off, but if you're lucky enough to have one or two champions, one or two people who are more tenured and then understand the vision, know the vision, they can show the vision, they can speak it. There you go, because you have two people that this person can go to for different things and at different points, and I'll always involve them in the process.
Awesome.
And that
Awesome.
allows me to kind of
Yeah.
start taking little steps back, but I can still be there for recognition, be there for helping to hold them accountable, and be there as far as making sure they understand what good looks like and just checking in just randomly.
So at a certain point, you're kind of the culture driver and you allow your people to kind of police themselves because, there's going to be more accountability amongst your peers rather than supervisors. So I
Exactly.
love that approach. Cool. We're a little over, but want to give one final opportunity for the audience to ask any questions they may have of Jeff before we conclude today's call. Awesome. Well, seems to be it, Jeff. Amazing presentation. Again, a reminder that we will be uploading this to our YouTube channel and also our Frank Connect library, so you can share with those that were unable to see this live, because I think this was super impactful, along with Wayne's earlier. So thank you to Jeff. Thank you to Wayne for our earlier speaker, speaking on, I think, a key challenge that we're all facing, which is finding the right people, putting them into the right seats, and developing them to be productive team members. So if we do that, I think we got a system that is pretty proven and solid. If we get those right people in there, then we're off to the races. So thank you, everyone, for joining in, and good luck the rest of the week.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.